They shaved a janitor's hair for fun until her billionaire husband walked in. A quiet janitor walks into work thinking it's just another long day, until a group of young trainees decide to make her their target. They laugh at her. They shove her. And then they do something so cruel, so humiliating, it changes everything. But what they don't know is that hidden cameras are watching. And the janitor they're mocking, she's part of a secret experiment, one designed to expose exactly this kind of cruelty. Then the door swings open, and the man who steps inside freezes, because that janitor is his wife. And he's the billionaire who built the company they're standing in. But instead of revenge, she asks for something nobody expects, something that shocks the whole world, and changes every life in that room. When kindness is met with cruelty, and mercy is the only weapon left, what happens next? Tell me in the comments where you're watching from right now, and if this story speaks to you, make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. The soft glow of pre-dawn light crept through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Denver penthouse, casting gentle shadows across the king-sized bed where Addison Jameson stirred from sleep. Her eyes fluttered open, taking in the peaceful face of her husband Aaron beside her. Even in sleep, his features held a hint of the quiet intensity that made him such a formidable CEO. Addison carefully slipped out from under the plush duvet, trying not to wake him. But Aaron had always been a light sleeper. His eyes opened, and a small smile touched his lips as he watched her. "You're up early," he murmured, his voice still rough with sleep. "Big day," Addison replied softly, pulling on her silk robe. "Can't be late for my first day as a janitor." Aaron sat up, running a hand through his dark hair. The concern in his eyes was impossible to miss. "We could still modify the plan, send someone else undercover." Addison shook her head, her natural curls bouncing with the movement. "We've been over this, honey. It has to be me. I need to see it firsthand." In their spacious kitchen, morning light spilled across the marble countertops as Addison prepared their usual breakfast: whole grain toast, scrambled eggs, and fresh fruit. The familiar routine felt different today, charged with anticipation. Aaron settled at the breakfast bar, his laptop open beside his coffee mug. "The team has everything in place," he reported, scrolling through his emails. "The makeup artists will be ready for you at 7 o'clock. Your employee ID and background documentation are all set." Addison nodded, sliding a plate of eggs in front of him. "And everyone involved knows to treat me exactly like any other janitor? No special treatment?" "Absolutely none," Aaron confirmed. "Only 3 people in the entire company know your true identity. Myself, HR Director Thompson, and Head of Security, Martinez. Everyone else will see exactly what we want them to see: a new contract cleaning staff member named Maria Lopez." Addison sat beside him, picking up a piece of toast. "I still can't believe what I saw that day," she said quietly, remembering the incident that had sparked this whole plan. The way that supervisor was yelling at that poor cleaning lady, humiliating her in front of everyone, and no one said a word. No one helped. Aaron reached over and squeezed her hand. "That's why we're doing this, to understand exactly what's happening and make real changes. I know you think I'm taking an unnecessary risk," Addison said, meeting his worried gaze. "But someone has to stand up for these people. They deserve to be treated with dignity." 2 hours later, Addison sat in a chair at Jameson Tech's private studio, watching her transformation in the mirror. The makeup artist worked with quick, precise movements, applying subtle changes that made her features appear plain and unmemorable. Her normally glowing skin was made to look tired, with carefully placed shadows under her eyes. "The wig is specially designed," the artist explained as she fitted the worn-looking synthetic hair over Addison's natural curls. It's secure enough to withstand a full day's work, but comfortable enough to wear for extended periods. Addison hardly recognized herself when the transformation was complete. Her designer clothes had been replaced by faded blue coveralls, her manicured nails trimmed short and bare. The woman in the mirror looked worn down by life, someone people's eyes would skip right past. "Perfect," she said softly, touching the fake ID badge clipped to her coverall pocket. The name Maria Lopez stared back at her, alongside a photo that captured her new, unremarkable appearance. Aaron appeared in the doorway, his expression tightening as he took in her transformation. "Are you absolutely sure about this?" he asked one last time. Addison stood, adjusting her coveralls. "I've never been more sure of anything," she replied. "These people need someone to witness their truth, someone who can actually make changes happen." The drive to Jameson Tech headquarters was quiet, Aaron's driver taking a route that would drop her at the service entrance rather than the grand main lobby she usually used. As they pulled up to the plain concrete entrance, Addison felt her husband's hand close over hers. "Promise me you'll be careful," he said, his voice tight with emotion. "If anything feels wrong, anything at all, you can pull out immediately. No questions asked." Addison leaned over and kissed his cheek. "I'll be fine. Have faith." The service entrance door was heavy, its metal surface marked with scuffs and dents from years of use. Addison took a deep breath, feeling the steady rhythm of her heartbeat. This was where she needed to be, doing what needed to be done. With unwavering purpose, she pulled the door open and stepped inside, leaving the privileged world of Addison Jameson behind and stepping fully into the role of Maria Lopez, contract cleaner. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as she made her way down the utilitarian hallway toward the custodial office. Her sensible work shoes squeaked slightly against the linoleum floor, such a different sound from her usual heels clicking on marble. But her heart remained steady, strengthened by the knowledge that she was exactly where she needed to be, ready to shine a light on the shadows that needed to be seen. The custodial office smelled of cleaning supplies and fresh coffee. Addison stood just inside the doorway, taking in the worn but tidy space with its metal lockers lining one wall and a small break table in the corner. A woman in her 50s looked up from a scheduling sheet, her salt and pepper hair pulled back in a neat bun. "You must be Maria Lopez," she said, rising from her desk with a warm smile. "I'm Mrs. Henderson, the supervisor for this shift. Welcome to Jameson Tech." "Thank you," Addison replied softly, conscious of maintaining her new identity. "I'm happy to be here." Mrs. Henderson's eyes were kind but observant, as she gave Addison a quick once-over. "First time working as a janitor?" "Is it that obvious?" Addison asked, grateful that her nervousness could pass for new job jitters. "Just a bit." Mrs. Henderson chuckled. "But don't worry, we were all new once. Come on, I'll show you around." They walked through a storage area where cleaning supplies were neatly organized on industrial shelving. Mrs. Henderson explained each section with patient detail. "These are the approved cleaning solutions. Always check the labels carefully. Safety first, especially with the stronger chemicals." Moving to a row of grey metal lockers, she handed Addison a key. "Locker 23 is yours. Keep your personal items locked up during your shift. There's a small break room through that door. You get 2 15-minute breaks and 30 minutes for lunch." Addison nodded, carefully storing her bag in the locker. The metal door squeaked slightly as she closed it, reminding her how different this was from her usual executive suite upstairs. "Now, let's get your cart set up," Mrs. Henderson said, leading her to a clean but well-used custodial cart. "You'll be responsible for the lobby-level training wing today. We've got new corporate trainees starting orientation, so it needs to stay spotless." They methodically stocked the cart with supplies, glass cleaner, all-purpose spray, paper towels, trash bags, and a full complement of cleaning tools. Mrs. Henderson demonstrated the proper way to arrange everything for efficiency. The mop bucket gets filled from these special taps, she explained, showing Addison the utility sink. Always test the water temperature with your hand first. As they worked, Addison found herself warming to Mrs. Henderson's practical, maternal manner. There was genuine pride in how she explained their procedures, a quiet dignity that demanded respect for the work they did. Pushing her fully stocked cart towards the training wing, Addison could hear young voices echoing down the hallway. The automatic doors slid open to reveal a group of about 15 new corporate trainees gathered in the lobby area. They were dressed in expensive business casual attire, most of them appearing to be in their mid-20s. Addison kept her head down as she began her work, remembering to move with the slightly hesitant manner of someone new to the job. She started with emptying trash bins, aware of the trainees' conversations dropping to whispers as she passed. "Oh my God, look at her hair," one young woman murmured to her friend, not bothering to lower her voice enough. "Do you think that's actually a style, or more like she couldn't afford a proper cut?" her friend replied with a snicker. Addison concentrated on her breathing, maintaining her composure as she continued working. She thought of Mrs. Henderson's quiet dignity and let the cruel comments roll past her. The morning wore on as the trainees moved between orientation sessions. During their coffee break, a tall young man in pressed khakis deliberately bumped his cup as Addison passed, sending dark liquid spreading across the floor. "Oops," he said with exaggerated concern. "Guess you'll need to clean that up." His companions barely hid their smirks as Addison quietly retrieved her mop. As she cleaned the spill, they stood watching, making no move to help or apologize. "At least she's good at something," one of them remarked, just loud enough for her to hear. The harassment continued through the afternoon. When Addison cleaned the glass walls of a conference room, they pressed their faces against the other side, making faces and laughing. While she dusted desk surfaces, they played a game of dropping papers for her to pick up. "Thank you so much," a young woman said with syrupy sweetness, dropping another sheet as soon as Addison straightened up. "You're just so helpful." Each time, Addison responded with gentle politeness, though her heart ached at their casual cruelty. She thought of the cleaning lady she'd seen being humiliated months ago, understanding now how such treatment wore away at one's spirit. As the afternoon light slanted through the windows, Addison methodically mopped the main hallway. She could hear the trainees gathered in the break room behind her, their laughter carrying clearly through the open door. "Did you see how she just keeps saying, 'Yes, of course,' and 'right away'?" one voice carried out. "It's like she's programmed or something." "Well, what else is she going to say?" another replied. "It's not like she could get a better job." More laughter followed, but Addison kept her movements steady and careful. Above her head, hidden in the ceiling tiles, small cameras whirred silently, recording every moment of casual cruelty, every instance of harassment disguised as accidents. She focused on creating perfect, gleaming strips of clean floor, letting their mockery wash over her like water. Her hands were steady on the mop handle, her movements deliberate and sure. In her mind, she held on to the image of Mrs. Henderson's quiet pride, the dignity she brought to work that others might consider beneath them. There was honor in doing any job well, in treating others with kindness regardless of how they treated you. That was the truth she had come here to understand, and the lesson these privileged young people had yet to learn. The next morning arrived with a crisp autumn chill. Addison entered the janitor's locker room, exchanging quiet greetings with Mrs. Henderson as she changed into her plain coveralls. Her fingers moved carefully as she adjusted the worn wig, making sure it sat securely on her head. "Ready for another day?" Mrs. Henderson asked kindly, helping Addison stock her cleaning cart. "Yes, ma'am," Addison replied softly, staying in character. She wheeled her cart toward the training wing, steeling herself for what lay ahead. The trainees were already there, gathered in small clusters around the lobby. Their chatter died down as she entered, replaced by meaningful looks and smirks. Addison focused on her work, starting with the windows as she had been taught. "Hey, cleaning lady!" A sharp voice cut through the quiet. A young woman with perfectly styled blonde hair, Addison remembered her from yesterday, strode over. "I need that." Before Addison could respond, the trainee snatched the cleaning rag from her hand. "This looks way too dirty. How are you supposed to clean anything with this?" Addison kept her voice steady. "Ma'am, I have fresh cloths in my cart." "Oh, your cart." Another trainee, a tall young man in an expensive suit, stepped in front of the cleaning cart, blocking Addison's path. "You know, the least you could do is smile for the people who pay your salary. We're basically your bosses." Addison felt her heart beating faster, but maintained her calm demeanor. She stepped back, creating distance between herself and the confrontational trainees. "I'll get another cloth," she said quietly, turning towards the supply closet. "What's wrong?" the blonde trainee called after her. "Too good to talk to us?" The morning dragged on, each hour bringing new forms of harassment. Addison kept working, methodically cleaning each area while trying to avoid direct interaction with the trainees. During their lunch break, she retreated to the janitor's break room, grateful for a moment of peace. But the afternoon proved even worse. As Addison wiped down tables in the conference room, she heard the distinctive click of a phone camera. A young trainee held up his phone, grinning. "This is definitely going on social media. Life of a cleaning lady, fascinating documentary." "Please don't take my picture," Addison said firmly but politely. "I'd rather not." "Oh, come on, it's just for fun," another trainee chimed in. He stepped closer, reaching out to flick at her wig. "Though you might want to dust this thing off first, looking a little rough there." Addison flinched away from his touch, her heart pounding. "Please stop," she said, her voice quiet but clear. "I'm just trying to do my job." Her request only seemed to encourage them. The trainees circled closer, their previous restraint evaporating. "Just trying to do your job?" One of them mimicked in an exaggerated accent. "Girl, you should be grateful we even talk to you." The hidden microphones in the ceiling picked up every word as their comments took on an increasingly racial edge. They made jokes about her hair, her skin tone, her manner of speaking, each barb carefully crafted to hurt, while maintaining plausible deniability. Addison kept working, though her hands trembled slightly as she pushed her cart. She thought of Aaron, of their shared mission, of the changes they hoped to create. She thought of every person who had ever endured similar treatment without the comfort of knowing it was temporary. As the day drew to a close, Addison began her final round of cleaning. She was almost finished when a trainee in designer heels deliberately stepped into her path. The collision sent Addison stumbling backward into her cleaning cart. The bucket of water tipped, spilling across the floor. "Oh no," the trainee said with mock concern. "How clumsy of you." Addison knelt beside the spreading puddle, reaching for her mop. Her lips moved in a silent prayer. "Lord, give me strength. Help me show them a better way." The trainees gathered around, watching her clean up the mess. They exchanged knowing looks and whispered conversations, their expressions suggesting this was just the beginning of their torment. "Same time tomorrow?" one called out as they finally began to leave. "Can't wait," another responded with a laugh. Addison remained on her knees, methodically soaking up the spilled water. Through the glass walls, she could see the trainees huddled together near the elevator, their heads close as they schemed. Their grins and furtive glances told her tomorrow would bring new challenges, new tests of her patience and resolve. As she finished cleaning the floor, Addison thought about the hidden cameras capturing every moment, every cruel word and action. She thought about these young people, so privileged and yet so blind to their own behavior. Most of all, she thought about the real cleaning staff who faced this treatment every day, without the protection of hidden cameras or the comfort of knowing it would end. The trainees' laughter echoed down the hallway as they finally departed, leaving behind their mess and their plans for tomorrow's entertainment. Addison straightened her wig, checked her cart, and prepared to end her shift, knowing that each moment of cruelty she endured was being recorded, each instance of harassment documented for a greater purpose. The early morning sun had barely cleared the Denver skyline when Addison arrived at Jameson Tech for her third day. Her hands trembled slightly as she changed into her plain coveralls in the janitor's locker room, but her resolve remained strong. Each button she fastened felt like armor being donned for battle. "This matters," she whispered to herself, adjusting her wig in the scratched metal mirror. "What they do to me, they do to others. Someone needs to shine a light on this." The building was quiet at this hour, her footsteps echoing in the empty hallways as she prepared her cleaning cart. She took extra care arranging her supplies, knowing that maintaining order helped her stay calm in chaos. The fresh scent of cleaning products usually brought her comfort, but today it couldn't mask her unease. Through the glass walls, she watched the first streams of employees arriving, their designer bags and pressed suits a stark contrast to her worn uniform. The training wing slowly came alive with activity, voices growing louder as more people filtered in. When the trainees arrived, Addison immediately sensed something different in their demeanor. They moved with barely contained excitement, exchanging meaningful glances and stifled giggles. Their energy felt dangerous, like storm clouds gathering before lightning strikes. "Good morning," Addison said softly as she passed their group, keeping her eyes lowered. "Oh look, our favorite cleaning lady is early today," one of the male trainees called out. "So dedicated." A female trainee with sleek blonde hair stepped forward, her smile sharp as a knife's edge. "You know, we were just saying how we should help you clean. It must be so hard doing everything alone." Addison's instincts screamed danger, but she was backed against her cart with nowhere to go. The group had effectively surrounded her, herding her towards the supply closet at the end of the hall. "That's really not necessary," Addison protested gently, trying to maintain her character while looking for an escape route. "Oh, but we insist," another trainee said, placing a manicured hand on Addison's shoulder and steering her backward. "We want to learn all about your important work." The supply closet door opened behind her, and Addison found herself pushed inside. The space was small, filled with shelves of cleaning supplies and the sharp chemical smell of bleach. The trainees crowded in after her, their expensive perfumes mixing unpleasantly with the industrial odors. "You know," the blonde trainee said, reaching toward Addison's head, "I've been wondering about something." Before Addison could react, hands grabbed her shoulders from behind, holding her still. With a quick yank, the blonde trainee ripped off her wig, exposing Addison's real hair beneath. The carefully braided cornrows she'd hidden for the experiment were now visible to all. "I knew it was fake," someone crowed. "But wait, it gets better." Through the crowd of bodies, Addison saw one trainee pull something from her designer bag, a pair of electric hair clippers, their metal surface gleaming under the fluorescent lights. "We borrowed these from Kevin in IT," the trainee explained, flicking them on. The buzz filled the small space. "He was going to use them for a prank on his roommate, but this is so much better." Addison's heart pounded so hard she could barely breathe. Please don't," she whispered, but her plea was drowned out by their laughter. The clippers came closer, and Addison felt the first harsh buzz against her scalp. Tears welled in her eyes as chunks of her hair fell to the floor. The trainees passed around their phones, recording her humiliation from every angle, their flash photography creating a disturbing strobe effect in the confined space. "Smile for TikTok?" someone called out, and the group burst into fresh laughter. Tears streamed silently down Addison's face as they continued their assault. She thought of every person who had ever endured such cruelty without recourse, without hope of justice. Her pain felt both personal and universal, a testimony to the casual brutality of privilege unchecked. The supply closet door suddenly swung wide open, flooding the space with light from the hallway. The trainees froze, their phones still recording, the clippers still buzzing in mid-air. Aaron Jameson stood in the doorway, his tall frame blocking the light, his face transforming from professional curiosity to horror as he took in the scene before him. He had arrived early to observe the experiment's final day, expecting to find subtle forms of workplace discrimination. Instead, he found his worst fears realized in the most brutal way possible. "What the hell is going on here?" His voice cut through the silence like a blade. The trainees scrambled backward, dropping the clippers, lowering their phones. They seemed to shrink under his gaze, their previous bravado evaporating as they recognized the CEO of Jameson Tech. Aaron moved with decisive speed, pushing through the group to reach Addison. He positioned himself between her and the trainees, his protective stance making it clear that the experiment was over. His hands shook with barely controlled rage as he shrugged off his suit jacket and draped it over Addison's shoulders. "The experiment is terminated," he announced, his voice hard with authority. "Everyone in this room is suspended pending immediate investigation. Security will escort you from the building. Your phones will be confiscated as evidence." The trainees stood frozen, their faces pale with the sudden realization of their actions and their consequences. Aaron pulled Addison closer, shielding her from their gaze as security personnel began arriving, summoned by his urgent text. The chapter ends with Aaron holding Addison protectively, his face a mask of horror and guilt as he watches security begin removing the trainees from the premises. The experiment designed to expose workplace cruelty had succeeded beyond their worst expectations, leaving both physical and emotional scars in its wake. The harsh fluorescent lights of the hallway seemed to buzz louder than usual as security officers led the group of trainees away. Their designer shoes squeaked against the polished floor, heads bowed in shame. The clatter of their heels grew fainter until silence settled over the corridor. Aaron Jameson stood with his arm protectively around Addison, his expensive suit jacket draped over her shoulders. His hands trembled, not from fear, but from a deep, simmering anger that made his jaw clench tight. Small tufts of Addison's dark hair still littered the supply closet floor, a stark reminder of the cruelty that had unfolded minutes before. "I'm so sorry," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "I should have been here sooner." Addison leaned into his embrace, her usual strength momentarily wavering. The rough patches where the clippers had scraped her scalp stung, but the emotional pain cut deeper. She pulled Aaron's jacket closer, breathing in its familiar scent of cedar and coffee. "We need to get you somewhere private," Aaron said softly, guiding her toward the executive wing. His phone buzzed constantly with messages, but he ignored them all, focused solely on his wife's well-being. The private conference room felt like a sanctuary after the cramped supply closet. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, warming the space. A company nurse had already arrived, along with Sarah from Human Resources, both women's faces etched with concern. "Mrs. Jameson," the nurse said gently, "may I check your scalp?" Addison nodded, sinking into one of the plush leather chairs. The nurse's cool fingers moved carefully through what remained of her hair, assessing the damage. Some spots were red and irritated where the clippers had caught her skin. "We should clean these areas and apply some antibiotic ointment," the nurse explained. "And I'm sorry, but the remaining hair is quite uneven. It might be best to shave it." Addison finished quietly. "Yes, I understand." Sarah stepped forward with a professional barber's kit. "I called my stylist. She's on her way, but I brought her supplies if you'd prefer to handle this now, privately." While the nurse dressed the small abrasions on her scalp, Aaron paced the room, his phone now pressed to his ear. "Yes, I want every second of footage from those cameras," he was saying. "Every angle. And confiscate their phones, all of them. No one leaves the building with video of this incident." The stylist arrived shortly after, her kind eyes meeting Addison's in the portable mirror she'd brought. "We'll take good care of you," she promised, draping a cape around Addison's shoulders. The gentle hum of professional clippers replaced the harsh memory of the attacker's crude tool. Addison watched silently as the last of her hair fell away, leaving her scalp smooth and even. The stylist applied a soothing oil that smelled of lavender, her touch professional, but compassionate. "Would you like to see the footage?" Aaron asked once they were alone again. His laptop sat open on the conference table, multiple video windows displayed on the screen. Addison nodded, steeling herself. The hidden cameras had captured everything in stark detail: the ambush, the mockery, the physical assault. But something else caught her attention too. Her own face throughout the ordeal. Even in tears there had been dignity in her expression, strength in her silence. "This needs to be shared," she said suddenly, touching the screen. "Not for revenge, but for change." Aaron looked uncertain. "Addison, are you sure? The media will be relentless." "That's exactly why it needs to be released," she insisted. "This kind of cruelty thrives in elite spaces because it stays hidden. How many others suffer in silence because they can't prove what happened or fear losing their jobs?" Her husband studied her face for a long moment before nodding. "All right, I'll have our PR team prepare a statement and release the footage." Events moved quickly after that. By early evening, the video had gone viral across multiple social media platforms. News vans clogged the streets around Jameson Tech headquarters, their satellite dishes reaching toward the darkening sky like metal trees. Reporters crowded the lobby, hungry for comments about the wealthy trainees who had attacked what they thought was a defenseless janitor, only to discover she was the CEO's wife, conducting an undercover investigation into workplace abuse. The trainees were placed on immediate administrative leave, their faces and names spreading across the internet almost as fast as the assault footage. Their social media accounts vanished one by one as public outrage exploded online. Hashtags trended: "Justice for Addison," "Privilege and Power," "Workplace Cruelty." That night, Addison sat cross-legged on her living room couch, watching the story unfold on national news. Her fingers absently traced the smooth curve of her newly shaved head, the bandages stark against her dark skin. On screen, pundits debated the implications of the incident, analyzing what it revealed about class divisions and corporate culture. Aaron brought her a cup of chamomile tea, settling beside her on the couch. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. Addison took a slow sip before answering. "I keep thinking about Mrs. Henderson and all the other cleaning staff. This happened to me for 3 days. How long have they endured it? How many others face this kind of treatment every day?" On television, a clip showed protesters gathering outside Jameson Tech, holding signs demanding accountability. The anchor's voice was grave as she discussed the shocking display of privilege and cruelty in corporate America. Addison watched the coverage, her expression troubled yet determined. The tea warmed her hands as she considered what would come next. The interviews, the investigations, the inevitable backlash. But something needed to change. Someone needed to shine a light into these dark corners of corporate culture. "Justice is good," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the television. "But change is better." Aaron squeezed her hand, and together they watched as their private experiment became a national conversation about power, cruelty, and the possibility of transformation. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Addison and Aaron's home office, casting long shadows across the polished hardwood floor. Addison sat in her favorite armchair, a thick folder open on her lap, while Aaron stood by his desk, scrolling through his phone with a frown. "The public response is intense," he said, running a hand through his hair. "Over 1 million signatures on the petition, demanding we fire them and press charges. News networks are calling non-stop." Addison nodded, her newly shaved head gleaming in the sunlight. "I've been reading the comments. People are angry. They want justice." "And they should be angry," Aaron replied, his voice tight with controlled emotion. "What those trainees did to you was cruel," Addison finished. "But firing them won't fix what's broken inside them." She pulled out a carefully prepared document from her folder. "I have another idea." Aaron raised an eyebrow, walking over to take the papers she offered. His eyes widened as he read. "A rehabilitation program. Addison, these people assaulted you. They filmed it. They laughed. Which is exactly why they need this," she said, standing to join him. "Look at the details. 4 weeks of intensive service work in communities they've never experienced. Cultural education sessions led by experts in diversity and inclusion. Direct accountability conversations with people they've hurt." Aaron flipped through the pages, his expression skeptical. "You want them to volunteer at homeless shelters, work in nursing homes, shadow janitorial staff?" "Yes," Addison said firmly. "And participate in guided discussions about privilege, power, and human dignity. They need to see the world beyond their bubble." "The public will say we're being too soft," Aaron warned. "They'll say these kids deserve punishment, not rehabilitation." Addison touched her husband's arm gently. "Sometimes the harder path is the right one. Punishment might satisfy anger, but transformation can change lives, not just theirs, but everyone they'll interact with in the future." Aaron studied his wife's face, seeing the same quiet determination that had led her to suggest the undercover experiment in the first place. "We should consult legal and HR before making any decisions." "Of course," Addison agreed. "I've already drafted the basic framework. The program would be a condition of continued employment, with clear benchmarks and evaluation criteria. The next few hours were filled with conference calls. Legal advisors reviewed liability concerns, while HR specialists discussed implementation logistics. By early afternoon, a modified version of Addison's plan was approved. The trainees were summoned to headquarters, arriving one by one with their lawyers. They looked different now, subdued, some frightened, others defiant. The conference room felt charged with tension as they took their seats, pointedly avoiding looking at Addison. Aaron stood at the head of the table, his presence commanding attention. "You're here because your actions 3 days ago were unconscionable. The public is calling for your termination and criminal charges. However, Mrs. Jameson has proposed an alternative." He nodded to Addison, who rose slowly. The trainees shifted uncomfortably as she moved to the front of the room, some staring at her shaved head, a visible reminder of their cruelty. "I believe in second chances," Addison began, her voice steady. "Not given freely, but earned through genuine effort and change. We're offering you a choice: immediate termination or participation in a 4-week rehabilitation program. One of the trainees, a young woman with perfectly manicured nails, laughed sharply. Rehabilitation? Like we're criminals? Like you're people who need to learn empathy. Addison corrected gently. She began outlining the program components. 20 hours per week of community service, 10 hours of educational sessions, and 5 hours of facilitated dialogue with service workers. "This is ridiculous," another trainee muttered. "We don't need to be rehabilitated just because we played a prank." "A prank?" Addison's voice remained calm, but her eyes were intense. "You physically assaulted someone you thought was powerless. You filmed it for entertainment. That reveals something broken in your understanding of human dignity." The room fell silent. Even their lawyers looked uncomfortable. "The choice is yours," Aaron added. "But understand this. If you choose termination, that video follows you forever. Every future employer will see it. Or you can choose to learn from this moment to become better people." The trainees exchanged glances, their earlier mockery fading into uncertainty. One by one, they signed the agreement papers, though their expressions ranged from resentful to dismissive. As they filed out, one trainee paused in the doorway. "This won't work," she said coldly. "You can't force people to care." Addison waited until the room was empty before allowing her shoulders to drop slightly. The weight of what she'd undertaken settled around her like a heavy cloak. These young people didn't want her help. They saw her as an enemy, someone who had tricked and exposed them. Standing alone in the conference room, Addison closed her eyes. "Lord," she whispered, "give me strength to lead those who hate me. Help me show them a better way." The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the empty chairs, and in the silence, Addison could feel the magnitude of the challenge ahead. But as she gathered her papers, her resolve remained unshaken. Sometimes the hardest paths led to the most important destinations. The maintenance hallway smelled of industrial cleaner and old mop water. At 7 o'clock in the morning, Addison stood waiting, her hands clasped behind her back, watching as the trainees shuffled in one by one. Their designer clothes and polished shoes looked out of place against the concrete floors and exposed pipes. "Good morning." Addison greeted them, her voice warm despite the cold stares she received in return. "Today we begin with practical experience. Everyone, please take a cleaning cart." The row of fully stocked janitorial carts lined the wall, each equipped with cleaning supplies, trash bags, and safety equipment. Nobody moved. "These carts cost more than my shoes," one trainee complained, eyeing the industrial equipment with distaste. Addison stepped forward and placed her hand on the nearest cart. "Each cart represents thousands of dollars in equipment and supplies. The people who use them are responsible for maintaining health and safety standards throughout this building. Now please select your carts." With exaggerated sighs and dramatic eye-rolling, the trainees eventually complied. Sophia Ramirez, standing at the back of the group, was the last to approach a cart. Her dark eyes studied Addison carefully as she gripped the handle. "We'll start with break room duty," Addison announced, leading them toward the employee lounges. "This involves sanitizing surfaces, restocking supplies, and ensuring food safety standards are met." A young man in an expensive suit snickered. "Don't we have people for that?" "Yes," Addison replied steadily. "You're looking at them. Today, that's you." She demonstrated proper cleaning techniques, how to mix cleaning solutions safely, the correct way to wipe surfaces to prevent cross-contamination, proper disposal of waste. Some trainees made a show of barely touching the cleaning supplies, while others performed the tasks with exaggerated disgust. "This is literally servant work," one trainee muttered, holding a sponge between two fingers like it might bite. Addison continued her instruction, her voice remaining level. "Every job that serves others has dignity. Watch carefully. You'll need to know this for window cleaning next." The morning progressed with similar resistance. When they moved to window duty, complaints echoed through the halls. "These products are ruining my manicure. My allergies can't handle these chemicals. This is basically slave labor." Addison demonstrated each new task with careful attention to detail, her movements precise and purposeful. "Notice how the squeegee angle affects the streak pattern," she explained, drawing the tool down a large window in smooth, controlled strokes. "Too much pressure leaves marks, too little leaves dirt behind. It's about finding the right balance." Sophia, who had remained quietly observant, stepped closer to watch. Her fingers tightened around her own squeegee as she studied Addison's technique, though she quickly looked away when others glanced in her direction. By lunchtime, the group had covered 3 floors of windows and break rooms. Addison directed them to the employee cafeteria, where their usual expensive takeout orders were banned as part of the program. "We'll eat what the service staff eats," she explained, leading them through the regular lunch line. The trainees clustered together at a table, picking at their cafeteria food with theatrical dismay. Sophia sat slightly apart, her posture tense as she ate quickly, efficiently. Her eyes kept returning to Addison, who was helping an elderly cafeteria worker clean up a spill. After lunch, Addison gathered them in a small conference room. The afternoon sun streamed through the windows they had cleaned earlier, highlighting dust motes in the air. "Now we'll discuss what you've experienced today," Addison began, settling into a chair. "What thoughts came up as you performed these tasks?" "Thoughts about quitting," someone mumbled. "Thoughts about firing my housekeeper for missing spots," another added with a smirk. Addison nodded thoughtfully. "Interesting. When you see someone cleaning, what assumptions do you make about their education, their intelligence, their worth?" The room grew uncomfortably quiet. "These people choose to do this work," a trainee finally offered defensively. "Do they?" Addison asked softly. "Or do circumstances choose for them? What opportunities were available? What barriers existed?" Sophia's pen stilled over her notepad. Her shoulders tensed slightly. "The woman who serves your coffee every morning has a master's degree from her home country." Addison continued. "The man who cleans your office at night is putting 2 children through college. The janitor you mocked last week speaks 4 languages." Several trainees shifted in their seats, avoiding eye contact. "Invisible labor holds our society together," Addison explained, "but we've created a hierarchy where some work is considered beneath dignity. What does that say about how we value human beings?" A few trainees still rolled their eyes or checked their phones, but others began to show signs of discomfort. One young woman stared at her perfectly manicured hands, now slightly rough from the morning's work. Another trainee repeatedly adjusted his tie, as if trying to reassert his normal identity. Sophia remained silent, but her dark eyes never left Addison's face. Something in her expression had softened, though she maintained her guarded posture. The discussion continued until 5 o'clock, touching on topics of privilege, prejudice, and the hidden costs of convenience. As the trainees filed out, their usual swagger was somewhat diminished. Addison gathered her materials slowly, her muscles aching from the day's physical work. The setting sun painted the city skyline in shades of orange and pink as she began her walk home. Despite her exhaustion, a small smile played at the corners of her mouth. She had seen it, in their shifting glances, in their moments of uncomfortable silence, in Sophia's thoughtful observation. The first tiny cracks in their armor of superiority. It wasn't much, but it was a beginning. The cool evening air carried the sounds of the city as Addison walked, her steps steady despite her tiredness. One day down, many more to go, But today she had seen the first glimmer of possibility, the first hint that hearts could change. The next morning dawned grey and cool, with clouds hanging low over Denver's skyline. Addison waited outside Jameson Tech's main entrance as a company van pulled up to transport the trainees. They emerged from the lobby in their usual designer clothes, looking uncertain when they saw her standing next to the plain white vehicle. "Today we're going to Hope Harbor Shelter downtown," Addison announced, her voice gentle but firm. "We'll be helping serve lunch and cleaning the dining area." Brandon, tall and usually detached, crossed his arms. "Is this really necessary? We could just donate money." "Money helps," Addison acknowledged. "But presence matters more. Please get in." The drive downtown took 20 minutes, during which the trainees sat in uncomfortable silence. Sophia kept glancing at Addison in the rearview mirror, her expression thoughtful. As they pulled up to the worn brick building, several of the trainees wrinkled their noses at the surrounding neighborhood. Inside, the shelter's coordinator, Ms. Martinez, greeted them warmly. "Thank you all for coming," she said, leading them to the kitchen. "We serve about 200 people each day here." The trainees awkwardly donned hairnets and plastic gloves. Brandon's usual mask of indifference slipped slightly as he watched residents begin filing in, men and women of all ages, some in worn clothes, others in business attire that had seen better days. "Remember," Addison instructed quietly, "look people in the eye. Smile. They're human beings, not problems to solve." For the first hour, they worked the serving line. Sophia's hands trembled slightly as she spooned out mashed potatoes. An elderly woman thanked her warmly, and Sophia's "You're welcome" came out barely above a whisper. Brandon found himself serving beside an older veteran named James, who wore a faded military cap. As they worked together, James shared his story between helping residents. 22 years in the service?" he explained, portioning out green beans. "Then one bad landing, shattered my spine, medical bills wiped out everything. Wife left. Couldn't work. Never thought I'd end up here." Brandon's normally steady hands faltered. A spoon clattered to the floor. "You okay, son?" James asked kindly. Brandon tried to respond but couldn't find his voice. His eyes grew bright with unshed tears. Addison, watching from nearby, saw him turn away quickly, shoulders shaking. After the lunch rush, while cleaning tables, Sophia finally approached Addison. They worked side by side for a few moments before Sophia spoke. "I don't understand you," she said quietly, wiping down a table with more force than necessary. "After what I did, you should hate us, want us punished. Instead, you're here, still trying to teach us." She looked up at Addison. "Why?" Addison was quiet for a long moment, methodically stacking chairs. "Because someone once believed in me when I didn't deserve it," she finally replied. "I made mistakes when I was younger, big ones, but instead of giving up on me, my mentor showed me grace. She saw past my actions to my potential." Sophia's movements slowed. "What happened?" "I was angry, hurting people because I was hurt," Addison explained. "But she kept showing up, kept believing I could be better. Her compassion changed me, made me want to be worthy of her faith in me." She smiled gently at Sophia. "Sometimes people just need someone to believe change is possible." Sophia's eyes filled with tears. She quickly looked away, but her cleaning motions became gentler, more thoughtful. As the afternoon wound down, the trainees gathered their belongings, subdued. Before leaving, Brandon approached James, hand extended. "Thank you," he said hoarsely, "for sharing your story, for everything." James shook his hand warmly. "Come back anytime, son." On the ride back to headquarters, the silence felt different, heavy with reflection rather than resistance. When they arrived, the trainees lingered in the lobby instead of rushing to leave. Brandon spoke first, his voice rough. "Addison, what we did to you." He swallowed hard. "I'm sorry. Really sorry." Sophia stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. "Me too. We were cruel and stupid and I'm so sorry." One by one, the others added their apologies, halting, imperfect but sincere. Addison accepted each one with quiet grace. That evening, Addison sat across from Aaron at their dining room table, picking at her salad as she recounted the day's events. "They're starting to understand," she said softly. "It's small steps, but real ones." Aaron reached across the table to squeeze her hand. "You have an incredible gift for seeing the best in people, even when they're at their worst." His eyes were warm with pride. "Keep trusting that instinct." Addison squeezed back, managing a tired smile. "I just hope it's enough to create lasting change. If anyone can do it, you can," Aaron assured her, one heart at a time. They finished their dinner as the city lights began twinkling outside their windows, the evening wrapped in quiet hope for tomorrow's possibilities. The morning sun cast long shadows across the manicured lawn of Evergreen Veterans Home as Addison's group arrived. The sprawling brick building, with its wide windows and wraparound porch, looked more like a grand country estate than a care facility. White rocking chairs swayed gently in the morning breeze, a few already occupied by early-rising residents. "Good morning," Addison addressed the trainees, her voice gentle but firm. "Today we're partnering with some very special people. Remember what you learned yesterday about dignity and respect?" The trainees nodded, their usual bravado noticeably subdued after yesterday's experience at the homeless shelter. They followed Addison through the automatic doors into a sun-filled lobby where Sarah, the activities director, waited to greet them. "We're so grateful for the extra hands today," Sarah said warmly. "Our residents love having young visitors, and many need help with simple tasks we take for granted." She led them down a carpeted hallway, decorated with vintage photographs and artwork created by residents. The morning activity room buzzed with conversation and the soft click of puzzle pieces. Elderly men and women sat at round tables, some in wheelchairs, others using walkers or canes. "Everyone, meet our volunteers from Jameson Tech," Sarah announced cheerfully. A chorus of hellos and welcomes filled the room. Sophia, who had shown the first signs of change yesterday, immediately gravitated toward an elderly woman struggling to sort puzzle pieces with arthritic hands. Brandon found himself beside a veteran wearing a Korean war cap, who invited him to join a game of checkers. Addison moved among the residents, greeting each one with genuine warmth. She paused beside an older black veteran named Thomas, who sat in his wheelchair by a window, a well-worn book in his lap. "That's quite a distinguished look you're sporting," Thomas commented, gesturing to Addison's shaved head with a gentle smile. "A badge of courage, I'd say." Addison touched her smooth scalp self-consciously. "Thank you, sir. It's still taking some getting used to." "Some of the best changes in life come uninvited," Thomas replied wisely. "What matters is how we carry them." Across the room, the trainees were gradually relaxing into their roles. Kelly, who had once mocked Addison's appearance, now patiently helped a resident named Dorothy practice writing letters with hands stiffened by arthritis. The genuine gratitude in Dorothy's eyes seemed to affect Kelly deeply. "You're an angel," Dorothy said, patting Kelly's hand. "These old fingers don't work like they used to, but you make me feel like I can still do something worthwhile." Kelly swallowed hard, blinking rapidly. "You can do lots of worthwhile things, Mrs. Dorothy. Would you tell me about the letter you're writing?" As the morning progressed, more barriers began to crumble. Marcus, who had filmed Addison's humiliation, found himself absorbed in conversation with a former history teacher who shared stories about marching with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. The resident's quiet dignity and forgiveness for past injustices left Marcus questioning his own recent actions. During lunch, the trainees helped serve meals and assist residents who needed help cutting food or opening containers. The simple act of helping someone eat with dignity sparked visible changes in their demeanor. The sneers and superiority that had marked their earlier behavior were replaced by genuine concern and careful attention. After lunch, Addison gathered the group in a small conference room back at Jameson Tech headquarters. Afternoon light streamed through the windows as they settled into chairs arranged in a circle. "I'd like us to reflect on what we've experienced these past 2 days," Addison said quietly. "What's coming up for you?" At first, silence filled the room. Then Sophia spoke, her voice trembling slightly. "I've been so focused on proving myself," she admitted. "Coming from a working-class family, getting into this program, I thought I had to be tough, better than everyone else. But seeing those residents today, how grateful they were for simple kindness." She wiped her eyes. "I lost myself somewhere along the way." Brandon leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "My father's on the board of 3 Fortune 500 companies," he said roughly. "Nothing I do is ever good enough. I think I've been taking that pressure out on others, making them feel small so I could feel big." One by one, the others opened up. Kelly spoke about her fear of failure, Marcus about the crushing expectations of family wealth. Each confession revealed the insecurities and pain beneath their previous cruelty. As the afternoon light began to fade, something unexpected happened. Without prompting, the trainees turned to Addison. "What we did to you," Kelly began, her voice thick with emotion. "It wasn't just wrong. It was cruel. And watching you these past 2 days, how you treat everyone with such genuine kindness." She shook her head, tears falling freely now. "You could have destroyed our careers," Marcus added. "Instead, you're teaching us to be better people. We don't deserve your forgiveness, but we're truly sorry." The others joined in, offering heartfelt apologies that felt markedly different from yesterday's initial attempts. These words came from a place of genuine understanding and remorse. Addison accepted each apology with grace, her own eyes growing moist. "Thank you," she said simply. "This is how change begins." That evening, Addison knelt beside her bed, her heart full. The soft glow of her bedside lamp created a peaceful atmosphere as she bowed her head in prayer. "Thank you, God," she whispered, "for progress beyond what I imagined possible. Thank you for opening hearts I feared were sealed shut. Thank you for showing me that compassion can truly transform lives." She touched her smooth scalp, remembering Thomas's words about it being a badge of courage. Sometimes the greatest victories came from the deepest wounds. As she prepared for bed, her heart felt lighter than it had in days, strengthened by the hope of genuine change taking root. The morning sunlight streamed through the conference room windows, casting a warm glow over the circle of faces. Addison sat with her leather-bound journal open on her lap, watching as the trainees settled into their usual seats. The atmosphere felt different now, lighter, filled with purpose rather than resistance. "Today we're going to explore what accountability means in your daily lives," Addison began, her voice gentle but firm. "Not just looking back at past actions, but forward to the kind of leaders you want to become." Sophia pulled out her journal, decorated with colorful sticky notes marking important passages from previous sessions. "I've been thinking a lot about that," she said, "about how small choices create bigger patterns." Brandon nodded, clicking his pen thoughtfully. Yeah, like how treating the cleaning staff badly wasn't just about those moments. It showed how we viewed whole groups of people as less important. Addison smiled encouragingly. That's exactly the kind of insight we're looking for. Let's write for 15 minutes about specific ways we can practice empathy in our future roles. The room fell quiet, except for the soft scratch of pens on paper. Addison observed the focused expressions, remembering how just 3 weeks ago these same faces had worn masks of contempt. The transformation was remarkable. Kelly looked up from her writing, her expression earnest. I've been drafting ideas for a mentorship program, she shared. Connecting entry-level employees with leadership training, especially people from backgrounds different from the typical corporate track. That's wonderful, Kelly. Addison responded warmly. Would you like to expand on that? As Kelly outlined her proposal, others began contributing their own ideas. Marcus suggested regular volunteer rotations at local shelters. Brandon proposed sensitivity training for all new hires. Each suggestion showed genuine thought and commitment to change. During their lunch break, the group gathered around a shared table, another change from the early days when they had maintained their distance from Addison. They discussed their morning insights while eating sandwiches from the cafeteria. You know what's weird? Sophia mused, setting down her water bottle. I actually look forward to these sessions now. 3 weeks ago I thought this was just punishment, but it's like I can see clearly for the first time in years. The others murmured in agreement. Addison felt her heart swell with pride and hope. This was exactly what she had prayed for, real, lasting change born from understanding rather than fear. After lunch, they reconvened to work on their community service proposals. The energy in the room was positive and collaborative as they shared ideas and offered feedback to each other. Addison circulated among them, offering gentle guidance and encouragement. Remember to consider sustainability, she advised. These aren't just one-time projects. They're blueprints for ongoing change in your future workplaces. The afternoon sun was casting long shadows across the floor when Aaron appeared in the doorway. His face was tense, and Addison immediately sensed something was wrong. He gestured for her to join him in the hallway. What is it? She asked quietly, closing the door behind her. Aaron's jaw clenched. CNN just called. There's a video circulating online, footage of you from 2 weeks ago, crying in the bathroom after a particularly rough session. Addison's stomach dropped. She remembered that moment clearly. She had needed a few minutes alone to process the emotional weight of the program. The bathroom was supposed to be a private space. Someone edited it. Aaron continued, his voice tight with anger. Added mocking captions, dramatic music. It's going viral, and public opinion is turning against both the trainees and the rehabilitation program. They're calling it coddling criminals and demanding harsher consequences. Addison leaned against the wall, feeling suddenly dizzy. But the only people with access to that footage were the trainees. Aaron finished grimly. One of them must have leaked it. The realization hit her like a physical blow. After all the progress, all the trust built, someone had betrayed her. Worse, they had twisted a vulnerable moment into entertainment. Addison's hands began to shake. She had believed in their change so completely. Had it all been an act? The genuine seeming conversations, the heartfelt apologies, the enthusiasm for making amends? Was it all just another form of manipulation? Taking a deep breath, she stepped back into the conference room. 8 faces turned toward her expectantly, unaware of the bomb about to drop. The bathroom video, she said simply, her voice wavering slightly. Someone leaked it. Confusion crossed their faces, followed by dawning horror as understanding set in. Sophia jumped to her feet. What? No, that's impossible. None of us would. But Addison was already gathering her things, tears threatening to spill over. The weight of betrayal pressed against her chest, making it hard to breathe. "Addison, please!" Kelly pleaded, reaching for her arm. "We didn't—" Addison pulled away, unable to meet their eyes. "The session is over for today," she managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. She walked quickly towards the door, her vision blurring. Behind her, she could hear their voices calling out, protesting, explaining, but she couldn't bear to listen. The trust she had carefully nurtured over the past 3 weeks lay shattered at her feet. As she hurried through the lobby, wiping tears from her cheeks, she could feel their gazes following her through the glass walls of the conference room. The same people she had defended, believed in, and fought to help, now stood helplessly watching as she fled the building, their newly formed bond crumbling in the wake of this cruel betrayal. The morning sun filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Jameson penthouse, but Addison barely noticed its warmth. She sat curled in the corner of their oversized leather couch, a soft cream-colored blanket wrapped tightly around her shoulders. Her phone buzzed for the 20th time that morning, another journalist seeking comment on the viral video. Without looking, she silenced it again. On her laptop screen, the footage played on repeat. The shaky camera work and dramatic music additions made her private moment of vulnerability feel cheap and exploitative. In the video, she stood bent over the bathroom sink, shoulders shaking with silent sobs, while overlaid text mocked her weakness and questioned her fitness to run the rehabilitation program. "You don't have to keep watching it," Aaron said softly, appearing beside her with a steaming mug of chamomile tea. His face was etched with concern as he set the cup on the coffee table. Addison pulled the blanket tighter. "I need to understand why. Why would they do this after everything we've been through?" Her phone lit up again, this time with Mrs. Henderson's name. The kind-hearted janitorial supervisor had left 3 voicemails already, each more worried than the last. Addison couldn't bring herself to answer. The betrayal felt too raw, too personal. Aaron sat beside her, gently closing the laptop. "You don't owe them anything more. You've already shown more grace than most people would. If you want to end the program now, everyone would understand." "Would they?" Addison's voice cracked. "The comments online. They're saying I was naive, foolish, that the whole program was just letting privileged kids off easy." She reached for her phone, scrolling through the endless notifications. 6 interview requests from major networks, 300 new Twitter mentions. Everyone has an opinion about my pain. Aaron wrapped an arm around her shoulders, and she leaned into his steady presence. "Your pain isn't entertainment," he said firmly. "And your compassion isn't weakness." Addison wiped fresh tears from her cheeks. "I really thought we were making progress. The way they opened up at the elder care facility, their community service proposals, it felt real." "Maybe it was real," Aaron suggested carefully. "We don't know for certain who leaked the footage." "That almost makes it worse," Addison whispered, not knowing who to trust. Across town, the morning played out very differently at the Corner Cup Cafe near Jameson Tech headquarters. The 8 trainees huddled around a large table, phones face down, coffee growing cold as they grappled with the crisis. Sophia paced behind her chair, unable to sit still. "Have you seen the comments? They're calling us monsters again. Everything we worked for, all the progress, it's like it never happened." Brandon pushed his untouched muffin away. "My mom called crying this morning. The video's everywhere. She asked how I could have been involved in something so cruel." "But we weren't," Kelly protested. "None of us leaked that footage. We have to tell Addison." "Tell her what?" Sophia spun, around. "That we're sorry someone betrayed her trust, but it wasn't us? That won't fix anything. The damage is done." The group fell silent, the weight of their situation settling heavily on their shoulders. Through the cafe window, they could see Jameson Tech's gleaming tower, the place where their lives had changed so dramatically over the past 3 weeks. I keep thinking about what Addison said that first day, Sophia continued, finally dropping into her chair. About how transformation is more powerful than punishment. She believed in us when no one else would. And now everyone's demanding we be fired and prosecuted again, Brandon added quietly. Sophia's hands clenched around her paper coffee cup. Then we have to take responsibility, whether or not Addison lets us back into the program, whether or not we ever find out who leaked the video. We have to show her, and everyone else, that her faith in us wasn't misplaced. The others straightened in their seats, a spark of determination cutting through their despair. How? Kelly asked. Sophia stood again, this time with purpose. We go to her, not through emails or calls she can ignore. We go to her home and face this head on. Show her we're not hiding from what happened. Is that appropriate? Brandon hesitated. After everything? Nothing about this situation is appropriate, Sophia replied. But Addison taught us about courage and accountability. It's time we showed her we were really listening. One by one, the others nodded. They gathered their belongings, leaving their untouched breakfast behind. As they walked to their cars, Sophia pulled up the address on her phone, the Jameson penthouse downtown. What if she won't see us? Kelly voiced what they were all thinking. Sophia took a deep breath, remembering Addison's unwavering patience with them, even at their cruelest. Then we wait. We show her the same persistence she showed us. We prove that her belief in second chances wasn't wasted. They formed a small caravan, following Sophia's navigation toward the heart of Denver. Each of them carried the weight of their past actions and the desperate hope for a chance to make things right. Whether Addison would grant them that chance remained to be seen, but they were determined to try. The morning sun had climbed higher in the sky as their cars wound through the city streets, drawing closer to the luxury high-rise where Addison and Aaron lived. None of them spoke about the fear churning in their stomachs or the very real possibility that this unannounced visit could backfire completely. They focused instead on what Addison had taught them about courage, about facing difficult moments with grace and honesty. As they pulled into the building's circular drive, Brandon voiced one last concern. What do we even say to her? Sophia turned off her engine, her hand gripping the door handle. We tell her the truth, that we're sorry, that we're grateful, and that we're ready to face whatever consequences come next, together. One by one, they stepped out of their cars, gathering in a tight group before the building's imposing entrance. The morning doorman watched them curiously as they huddled in an impromptu circle, drawing strength from each other's presence. Ready? Sophia asked, though she knew none of them truly felt ready for what lay ahead. 8 heads nodded in silent agreement. Together, they walked toward the building's entrance, their footsteps synchronized in shared purpose and determination. Whether this bold move would heal or further damage their relationship with Addison remained to be seen, but they knew they had to try. Addison sat curled in her favorite armchair, a soft blanket wrapped around her shoulders like armor. The morning sunlight filtered through the penthouse windows, but she couldn't feel its warmth. Her phone buzzed again, another reporter seeking comment on the leaked footage. She let it go to voicemail. A gentle knock at the door made her freeze. Aaron had left for the office an hour ago, promising to handle the media storm. She wasn't expecting anyone. The knock came again, more hesitant this time. Addison stood slowly, adjusting her head wrap. Since the assault, she'd grown oddly protective of her healing scalp. She crossed the living room, each step measured and careful. When she opened the door, her breath caught. 8 familiar faces stared back at her, the trainees looking nothing like the polished professionals they'd been just weeks ago. Their eyes were red-rimmed, their shoulders slumped with exhaustion. Each one clutched what appeared to be handwritten letters. "Mrs. Jameson," Sophia spoke first, her voice trembling. "We know we shouldn't be here, but I leaked the video." The words burst from Evan, who pushed forward from the back of the group. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his designer clothes wrinkled. Tears streamed down his face. "I did it, not them." His voice cracked. "I was scared. The program was ending, and I thought people would say I hadn't really changed, that I was still the same entitled jerk who hurt you, so I leaked that clip to prove how bad I felt, how much your pain affected me." He choked on a sob. "But I just hurt you all over again." Addison's hand tightened on the doorframe. The betrayal felt fresh, like a reopened wound. She'd watched that footage countless times since yesterday, herself, crying quietly in a bathroom stall during the program's second week, thinking she was alone with her pain. "We didn't know," Kelly said softly. "None of us knew until this morning when Evan confessed." "But we're all here," Brandon added, "because what you taught us about accountability means facing our mistakes together." Sophia stepped forward, holding out her letter with trembling hands. "You showed us what true strength looks like, not in fighting back or seeking revenge, but in choosing to see the good in people who didn't deserve it." One by one, the others extended their letters. Addison looked at their faces she'd come to know so well over the past weeks. She saw genuine remorse in their eyes, but more than that, she saw transformation. These weren't the same young people who had tormented her just weeks ago. "The day you caught us making fun of the cleaning staff," Kelly said, wiping her eyes. "I went home and couldn't sleep. No one had ever made me look at myself that way before." "You could have destroyed us," Brandon added. "Instead, you taught us about dignity and second chances." Addison felt something shift in her chest, a softening where there had been hurt. She stepped back from the doorway. "Would you like to come in?" she asked quietly. "I can make some tea." The relief on their faces was palpable as they filed into her home. They gathered awkwardly in her living room, perching on the edges of sofas and chairs, still clutching their letters. Addison busied herself in the kitchen, measuring loose tea leaves into a pot while water heated. She could hear them whispering among themselves, their voices thick with emotion. When she returned with a tray of steaming cups, Evan stood up. "I'll resign," he said firmly. "I'll make a public statement taking full responsibility for the leak. You don't have to protect me anymore." Addison set the tray down carefully. "Sit down, Evan." He sank back into his chair, hands shaking as he accepted a cup of tea. "What you did was wrong," Addison said, looking at each of them in turn. "But running away from our mistakes doesn't fix them. We still have work to do." Sophia leaned forward. "You mean?" "We'll finish the program," Addison said. "These last few days matter too much to throw away." The tension in the room broke. Several of the trainees began crying again. But these were tears of relief, of gratitude. They spent the next few hours sharing their letters, their fears, their hopes. They talked about how the program had changed them, not just professionally, but personally. Kelly spoke about volunteering at the homeless shelter on weekends now. Brandon described reconnecting with his estranged father, inspired by Addison's lessons on forgiveness. As afternoon faded into evening, Addison walked them to the door. They hugged her one by one, gentle, respectful embraces so different from their cruel touches weeks ago. Evan was the last to leave. He turned back, his eyes red but clear. "I don't deserve your forgiveness." "None of us deserve forgiveness," Addison replied softly. "That's what makes it so powerful when it's given anyway." She stood in the doorway long after they'd gone, watching the sky turn pink over the Denver skyline. Their letters lay spread across her coffee table, 8 testimonies to the transformative power of compassion. Something had shifted today, not just in them, but in her. Where there had been doubt, she felt certainty. Where there had been pain, she felt purpose. The evening air carried the scent of approaching spring. Addison breathed it in deeply, feeling the weight of the past 24 hours lifting from her shoulders. Sometimes healing came in unexpected ways, through the very people who had caused the initial wound. She closed the door softly, ready to face whatever tomorrow would bring. The morning sun cast long shadows across the Jameson Tech parking lot as Addison pulled into her usual space. Her hands rested on the steering wheel for a moment as she gathered her thoughts. Yesterday's emotional reunion with the trainees had shifted something fundamental, both in them and in her. As she walked through the lobby, several employees nodded warmly, recognizing her from the viral video. But Addison wasn't thinking about that spotlight anymore. Her mind was focused on the 8 young people waiting upstairs and the important work they still had to complete. When she opened the training room door, the scene before her was remarkably different from those first cruel days. The trainees had arranged the chairs in a circle, coffee and pastries set out thoughtfully on a side table. They stood when she entered, not out of obligation, but respect. "Good morning," Sophia said warmly, stepping forward to help with Addison's bags. "We got here early to set up. And we made sure to get the coffee you like," Brandon added, pointing to a cup marked with her name. 2 sugars, splash of cream. Addison felt her throat tighten with emotion. These small gestures of consideration. How far they'd come from those first days of mockery and spite. "Thank you," she said simply, setting her materials on the table. "Shall we begin?" They settled into their seats, notebooks open, faces attentive. Addison began their final lesson on humility and service leadership, but this time the discussion flowed naturally. When she spoke about the importance of treating everyone with dignity regardless of their role, heads nodded in understanding rather than dismissal. "I used to think leadership meant being the loudest voice in the room," Kelly admitted during their morning discussion. "But you've shown us it's about lifting others up, about serving rather than demanding service." Addison guided them through role-playing exercises designed to build empathy and cultural awareness. They practiced scenarios, how to handle microaggressions in meetings, ways to make the workplace more inclusive, strategies for standing up for others without speaking over them. Around 11 o'clock, Aaron slipped quietly into the back of the room. He leaned against the wall, arms crossed, watching as the trainees worked through a particularly challenging scenario about addressing racial bias in hiring practices. "It's not enough to just not be racist," Evan was saying passionately. "We have to be actively anti-racist. That means examining our own biases and calling out discrimination when we see it." Addison caught Aaron's eye across the room. His face held a mixture of pride and amazement. These were the same young people who had assaulted his wife weeks ago. Now they were earnestly discussing ways to make their future workplaces more equitable and just. After lunch, the trainees took turns presenting their community service proposals. Each one reflected deep thought and personal transformation. Sophia proposed a mentoring program pairing corporate employees with first-generation college students. "My parents were immigrants," she explained, her voice steady. "I forgot what it was like to feel invisible until this program reminded me." Brandon outlined a partnership with local veterans organizations inspired by their shelter visit. Kelly suggested implementing mandatory empathy training for all new hires, using their own story as a case study. But it was Evan's presentation that brought tears to many eyes. He proposed a foundation specifically focused on supporting janitorial staff and their families through scholarships and professional development opportunities. The people we look past every day, they're not invisible, he said, looking directly at Addison. They're often the ones holding our companies together. It's time we acknowledged that with more than just words. As afternoon light filled the room, Addison gathered them for their final reflection circle. The atmosphere was solemn yet hopeful. "Before we close," she said softly, "I'd like each of you to share what you're taking from this experience, and more importantly, what you commit to doing with these lessons." One by one, they spoke from their hearts. "I commit to never letting casual cruelty go unchallenged," Kelly said, her voice firm. "Even when it's uncomfortable, especially when it's friends doing it. I commit to remembering that every person has a story," Brandon added, "and that our worst moments don't have to define us if we're willing to change." Sophia wiped tears as she spoke. "I commit to using my position and privilege to make space for others, the way you made space for our growth even after what we did." When it came to Evan, he stood up, facing Addison directly. "I commit to earning this second chance every day of my career, not just through words, but through actions that honor what you taught us about dignity, forgiveness, and true leadership." The others followed suit, standing one by one, their commitments ringing with sincerity. "I commit to seeing people, really seeing them. I commit to leading with compassion. I commit to being brave enough to stand up for what's right. I commit to remembering this journey and sharing its lessons." Aaron moved to stand beside his wife as she closed the circle. The room held a sacred kind of silence, the kind that comes when hearts have been truly transformed. Addison looked at each face in turn, remembering their first day, seeing how far they'd come. These young people would soon step into positions of power and influence, but they would carry with them something precious. The understanding that true leadership begins with humility, and that every person, from CEO to janitor, deserves to be treated with dignity. The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of Jameson Tech's main conference room, casting warm patterns across the polished table where 14 certificates lay in neat rows. Each one bore a name in elegant script, marking completion of the 4-week restorative justice program. Addison stood at the front of the room, her newly grown hair forming a soft, short crown around her head. She wore a simple navy dress, her posture relaxed but dignified. The trainees filed in quietly, so different from the boisterous group they'd been just weeks ago. "Before I hand these out," Addison began, her voice gentle, "I want you to know how proud I am of each of you. True change isn't easy. It takes courage to face our mistakes, and even more courage to transform because of them." She lifted the first certificate. "Sophia Ramirez." Sophia approached, her eyes glistening. As Addison handed her the certificate, Sophia whispered, "Thank you for believing in us when we gave you every reason not to." One by one, Addison called them forward. Brandon, Kelly, Marcus. Each exchange carried its own weight of meaning, of shared understanding about how far they'd come. Evan Thompson. Evan walked up slowly, his usual confidence replaced by humble gratitude. "Mrs. Jameson," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "I hope you know how deeply you've changed us, changed me." Through the conference room windows, they could see the gathering crowd of reporters on the plaza below. News vans lined the street, their satellite dishes reaching skyward. The story of Addison's assault had captured national attention. Now everyone wanted to know how it would end. "They're waiting for us," Kelly observed nervously. "We don't have to speak to them." Addison assured the group, "This journey has been yours to walk. It's yours to share, or not, as you choose." The trainees exchanged looks. Sophia stepped forward. "With all respect, Mrs. Jameson, we won't say anything until you do. You should speak first." The others nodded in agreement. Evan added. "We owe you that much. And more." Together, they made their way downstairs. Security had arranged a small platform near the building's entrance. As soon as Addison appeared, cameras began flashing, and reporters called out questions. Addison approached the microphone with characteristic grace. 4 weeks ago, a video showed the worst of human nature. She began. "Today, I stand before you to testify about the best of it, about the power of accountability paired with mercy." She spoke briefly about the program, careful not to sensationalize either the original incident or the transformation that followed. When she finished, she stepped back, and the trainees moved forward as one. Evan reached the microphone first. His hands trembled slightly, but his voice was steady. "What we did was inexcusable. We acted with cruelty and prejudice, and we hurt someone who showed us nothing but kindness. But Mrs. Jameson offered us something remarkable, a chance to learn, to grow, to become better people." He paused, gathering himself. "Today I'm announcing my commitment to spend the next 6 months volunteering full-time at the downtown Denver homeless shelter. Not because I have to, but because I want to continue the work of becoming the kind of leader this experience has shown me I can be." Sophia stepped up next. "In addition to my regular duties at Jameson Tech, I'll be working with HR to develop a comprehensive empathy training program for all employees. We want to ensure that what happened here never happens again, and that the lessons we learned become part of our corporate DNA." One by one, the others shared their commitments to change. Kelly announced a mentoring program. Brandon outlined plans for veteran support initiatives. Each statement rang with sincerity and purpose. The reporters called out questions. "Mrs. Jameson, do you really forgive them? How can you be sure they've changed? Isn't this just damage control?" Addison returned to the microphone. "In my life, I've witnessed many forces for change," she said thoughtfully. "But nothing transforms people more powerfully than accountability paired with mercy. When we hold people responsible for their actions while still believing in their capacity for good, remarkable things happen." She glanced at the group behind her. These young people who had started as antagonists and become something like family. These graduates aren't just saying the right things, they're committing to doing the hard work of change. That's what matters most. As the press conference wound down, someone suggested a group photo. They gathered naturally around Addison, no forced poses or practiced smiles, just quiet gratitude and shared purpose captured in a single frame. In that moment, standing together in the morning light, they were neither victims nor villains, but simply people who had learned one of life's most precious lessons, that it's never too late to choose a better path, and that sometimes the greatest acts of leadership begin with the humility to admit when we're wrong. The camera clicked, preserving the image. Addison in the center, her gentle strength evident in her posture. Sophia and Evan flanking her, their faces bearing the serious joy of those who have been transformed. The others gathered close, each expression reflecting the weight and hope of the moment. It was a picture of redemption, not the easy kind that comes from mere words, but the hard-won kind that grows from genuine change. 3 weeks after the program's graduation, Addison sat in her home office, surrounded by stacks of letters and emails. Each one told a similar story. Organizations desperate to learn how she had transformed hostility into healing. "Listen to this one," she called to Erin, who was reviewing documents nearby. "Dear Mrs. Jameson, our corporation has struggled with workplace discrimination for years. When we saw how your program changed those trainees, we knew we needed your help." She set down the letter and picked up another. "Our church wants to implement your methods in our community outreach program." Aaron looked up from his laptop, a gentle smile crossing his face. "That's the 20th request today. The foundation can barely keep up." Addison ran her fingers over the smooth surface of her desk, still amazed by how their painful experience had bloomed into something beautiful. I never imagined my worst day would become someone else's hope. That's why we need to share it properly, Aaron said, standing to join her. The press conference is scheduled for 2 o'clock. Are you ready? Addison nodded, touching her head where her hair was growing back in neat, short curls. More than ready. The Jameson Tech conference room buzzed with activity that afternoon. Television cameras lined the back wall while reporters filled every seat. On a screen behind the podium, elegant blue letters spelled out, "The Addison Method, transforming corporate culture through restorative leadership." Aaron stepped up first, his normally reserved demeanor warmed by pride. Good afternoon. Today, the Jameson Foundation is launching a nationwide initiative based on principles of empathy, accountability, and restoration. We've seen firsthand how these principles can transform lives and workplaces. But rather than tell you about it myself, I'd like to introduce the woman who proved that mercy can be the strongest response to cruelty. My wife, Addison Jameson. Addison approached the podium amid respectful applause. She wore a simple blue dress that complemented her natural elegance, and her eyes held the quiet confidence of someone who had walked through fire and emerged stronger. Thank you all for coming, she began. A few months ago, I stood in this building wearing a janitor's uniform, believing that exposing workplace cruelty might lead to change. What I didn't expect was how that exposure would reveal something far more powerful, the human capacity for transformation. She paused, gathering her thoughts. The Addison Method isn't just about preventing discrimination or harassment. It's about creating spaces where accountability and compassion work together, where people who cause harm have the chance to truly understand their impact and choose a different path. For the next hour, Addison outlined the program's core components: experiential learning, community service, guided reflection, and direct dialogue between affected parties. She shared anonymized stories of change, not just from the original trainees, but from pilot programs already running in 3 other companies. This work isn't easy, she admitted. It requires vulnerability from everyone involved. But I've watched it rebuild what cruelty tried to destroy. I've seen people move from defensiveness to genuine remorse, from shame to redemption, from apathy to advocacy. Questions followed, and Addison answered each one with thoughtful honesty. Yes, the program required significant commitment. No, it wasn't a quick fix. Yes, they would provide training and support to participating organizations. As the press conference concluded, reporters lingered, hungry for more details. But Aaron gently guided Addison away, knowing she needed time to process the day's significance. That evening, their penthouse filled with soft jazz and the aroma of Aaron's signature pasta dish. They had declined multiple dinner invitations, choosing instead to celebrate privately. Candlelight flickered across their dining room table as they savored both the meal and the moment. I'm so proud of you, Aaron said softly, reaching for her hand. You turned trauma into triumph. Addison squeezed his fingers. We did it together. You could have shut everything down after the assault. Instead, you trusted my vision. Because I trust your heart, he replied. You saw possibility where I only saw pain. They moved to the living room after dinner, where moonlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows. Aaron refilled their glasses with sparkling cider while Addison curled up on their oversized sofa. Sometimes I wonder, she mused, if this was God's plan all along, to use our suffering as a ministry. Aaron settled beside her. If anyone could find divine purpose in difficulty, it's you. They sat in comfortable silence, listening to Miles Davis weave melodies through the evening air. Eventually, Addison excused herself to complete her nightly ritual. In their bedroom, she opened her journal, a beautiful leather-bound book Aaron had given her when the program began. She picked up her favorite pen and began to write. Dear God, tonight my heart overflows with gratitude. You've shown me that no pain is wasted when we offer it in service to others. The Addison method isn't really about me. It's about your power to bring healing from hurt, strength from weakness, and light from darkness. I pray for every organization that will implement this program. Give them wisdom and patience. Help them remember that true change requires both justice and mercy. Most of all, let this work continue to transform lives in ways we can't yet imagine. Thank you for Aaron's unwavering support, for the trainees' genuine change, and for every person who believes in this vision of restoration. As this movement grows, keep us humble and focused on what matters most, seeing and honoring the dignity in every human being. She paused, watching her words fill the page. Each letter represented hope. Hope that compassion could rebuild what cruelty destroyed. Hope that people could choose transformation over destruction. Hope that one small act of mercy could ripple outward in endless circles of change. Addison closed her journal and placed it carefully on her nightstand. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities, but tonight she rested in the knowledge that their suffering had indeed become an unexpected ministry, one that might help heal workplace cultures across the nation. Through the bedroom window, city lights twinkled like earthbound stars. Each one represented someone's story, someone's struggle, someone's potential for change. The Addison method couldn't reach them all, but it could light the way for those ready to choose a better path. Addison stood in her dressing room at the National Broadcasting Studio, taking slow, deep breaths as the makeup artist made final touches. Her natural curls, now grown into a soft crown around her face, caught the light from the vanity mirror. She touched them gently, remembering how different things had been just 6 months ago. 5 minutes, Mrs. Jameson, called a production assistant through the door. In her lap, her phone buzzed with an incoming video. She smiled, seeing it was from Sophia. Opening the message revealed all 12 former trainees crowded together, grinning at the camera. "We're watching live," Sophia announced. "You've got this, Addison. Your story changed our lives." Brandon added, "Now it's going to change millions more. Thank you for believing in second chances." Evan said softly. The others nodded in agreement. Tears threatened to ruin her makeup, but Addison blinked them back. These young people, once so cruel, had become passionate advocates for workplace dignity. Their transformation still amazed her. Aaron appeared in the doorway, handsome in his charcoal suit. "Ready?" She nodded, smoothing her royal blue dress as she stood. "Ready?" The studio lights felt warm as Addison settled into the interview chair. The host, Catherine Walsh, reached over to squeeze her hand off camera. "Just tell your story like we're having coffee," she encouraged. The red light blinked on, and Catherine turned to face the camera. Tonight, we're joined by Addison Jameson, whose extraordinary story of compassion and transformation has sparked a national movement. Addison, thank you for being here. Thank you for having me, Catherine. Let's start at the beginning. 6 months ago, you went undercover as a janitor in your husband's company. What inspired that decision? Addison leaned forward slightly, her voice steady. I kept hearing stories about how low-wage workers were being treated, not just at our company, but everywhere. I wanted to understand their experience firsthand, but more than that, I wanted to prove that empathy could create real change. As Addison recounted the experiment, the harassment and the assault, she noticed Catherine's eyes growing moist. But she didn't linger on the painful parts. Instead, she focused on what happened after, the choice to offer rehabilitation instead of punishment, the gradual awakening of conscience, the power of guided accountability. The turning point, Addison explained, came when they started seeing people instead of positions. when they served meals at the homeless shelter, when they helped elderly veterans, when they heard stories different from their own. That's when hearts began to change. Catherine nodded. Yet even after their transformation, you faced another betrayal with the leaked video. That moment tested everything I believed about forgiveness. Addison admitted. But it also proved that true change is possible. They chose to stand with me, to take responsibility, to become advocates for the very values they once mocked. The camera panned to show photographs of the trainees' community service projects, their public apology, their ongoing work with the Addison method. Turning toward the studio audience, particularly the older members who nodded in recognition of life's hardships, Addison spoke from her heart. I want everyone watching to understand this truth. Mercy changes more than punishment ever could. When we give people space to acknowledge their mistakes and choose a different path, we create ripples of transformation that touch countless lives. The studio fell silent for a moment before erupting in applause. As people rose to their feet, Addison saw tears on many faces, tears of recognition, of hope, of possibility. The Addison method is now being implemented in over 50 major corporations. Catherine announced as the applause faded. What do you hope its legacy will be? I hope it reminds us that cruelty doesn't have to have the final word. Addison replied. That through accountability paired with compassion, we can rebuild what hatred tries to destroy. That every workplace can become a space where dignity thrives and second chances transform lives. As the interview concluded, the audience gave another standing ovation. Catherine hugged Addison warmly before the cameras stopped rolling. You're going to help so many people, she whispered. Aaron waited in the wings, his eyes shining with pride. Together, they walked through the studio's glass doors into the bright afternoon sunlight. Addison squeezed his hand, feeling the warmth of the sun on her face and the joy of knowing that their difficult journey had sparked a movement rooted in compassion, redemption, and hope. Thank you for being here. If something in this story stayed with you, I'd love to see you again. Subscribe. And tomorrow, I'll bring you another story crafted with heart.